So, ladies and gentlemen, and other non binary folks, good evening. Today is Tuesday, November the 21st. I am so embarrassed. I did the tribute to the Maidan because it's 10 uh, years since the anniversary of the Maidan, the Day of Dignity. And I misspoke at the beginning of that video saying that it was February 21st, as if it were the eve of the full-scale invasion. That was clearly a mistake. I apologize for anybody that is confused by that video. And it is Tuesday, November 21st, 2023, the 10-year anniversary of the roots of this war, the Day of Dignity, and day 636 of Russia's full-scale invasion of the country of Ukraine. I want to talk about that day as I understand it, because it's a history that a lot of Americans and a lot of Europeans may not be aware of. I certainly was not aware of it until I read Anna Reid's fabulous book, Borderlands, which, if you haven't read Anna Reid's book, Borderlands, it's well worth the read. Now, it's a little bit dated at this time because it was written in the 90s, but having been written in the 90s about Ukraine gives it a certain feel and a certain attitude that I think captures the zeitgeist of that time. And then she updated it in 2015 after the Maidan Revolution and the deposing, really, of Lukashenko. So what happened was the Russians interfered once again in the election for the president. They worked to rig the election in favor of, Yanukovych. And the people were unhappy. And so a couple of hundred kids, students mostly, gathered in the Maidan to protest. That protest lasted for a couple of weeks. They were ensconced in the Maidan. They tap on my head. God, you're a good friend, Trav. You're a good friend, boy. You guys are a riot. So a couple hundred students gathered in the Maidan to protest this election that had been rigged in favor of Moscow's puppet. It probably wouldn't have gone anywhere. The historians seem to think that it, in all likelihood, would have petered out as the weather got cold if Yanukovych had just ignored it. But he didn't. He sent in the police, he sent in the power of the state with truncheons and dogs and beat the kids badly. The next day, 100,000 people flooded into the Maidan, and they didn't leave. There were increasing clashes. They set up tents, they set up food stations, they set up hospitals. As the clashes with the police got more intense and more violent through December. In January, the parliament passed a series of anti-protest laws, threatening all of these people in the streets, now well over 100,000. Some days, 1 million people in the streets of Kyiv, threatening them with all kinds of sanctions should they continue this protest. But they continued. They continued through January. They continued through February, supporting each other, having political speeches and the opposition speak. Bands playing, popular bands, rock bands taking the stage, giving free concerts to keep the people there and engaged. They continued making their demands through January, through February, until finally someone, we don't know who to this day, whether they were internal security services people, Yanukovych's hired goons, or some assassins sent by the Kremlin. But somebody climbed up on top of the hotel overlooking the Maidan and started shooting protesters. The Maidan massacre, February 20th, 2014. In a lot of history, that would have been the end of this protest. But the Ukrainians were insistent. This was a grassroots movement, a groundswell of support that said to the people in power, enough. Enough is enough. And when they took that step that day and started murdering their people, the people fought back. You'd never know that some of those buildings on the Maidan today were burned out husks in the wake of the people's wrath. And the executioners on the roof may have gotten away, but they had to flee. They had to run to get away, as did Yanukovych. Within 72 hours, he had fled the country. And democracy was birthed in the blood of a nation that day. I think about, what was her name? Victoria Newman, right? I think it was Victoria Newman. She was the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine at the time. She served sandwiches on the Maidan. And for that, Trump ended her career when he got into power. She was no friend of Vladimir Putin's. Vladimir Putin wanted him gone. And so, for no apparent reason, Donald Trump fired Victoria Newman. Of course he did. Right, Paula? Right. Because she wouldn't take a loyalty pledge to Donald Trump. We all take a pledge to the Constitution of the United States. And that's where our loyalty should lie. So that was not the end of it. Because then, of course, they had to have elections. They had to get people into the presidency. And they had to clean up after Yanukovych and his mess, which they did. But Putin was unhappy, boy. He was unhappy. Over the next few months, the spring and into the summer, the little green men started to show up in the Donbass and in Crimea. These were Russian army regulars and special forces in civilian clothing, pretending to be Ukrainians, acting as if they were locals, and they were here to support the independence of Crimea. And before too long, Crimea had been taken by the Russians. Further, Igor Strelkov, or Igor Girkin as he is better known, was installed in the Donbass with a lot of his little green men to start the separatist movement, to start the war. And the war of the Donbass began in the fall of 2014. That war has raged now for 9 years. It picked up pace with the full-scale invasion 2 years ago. But make no mistake, it's been raging for 9 years. The separatist movement in the Donbass is the same bullshit that the Russians pulled in Transnistria, in Ossetia, in Georgia, creating these phony, internal, Russian-speaking separatist movements using Russian troops to divide and conquer nations. And make no mistake, the Russians are doing it to us in the United States and to every European country that there is, not with troops on the ground pretending to be locals, but rather with social media profiles pretending to be Americans, pretending to be Germans, and sowing dissent into the heart of every democracy. This is the modern cyber warfare that we are facing. A socially engineered movement that lets the fringe of our society believe that they are the majority, that they have lots of support out there, because there's 1,000 voices on Facebook amplifying their bullshit. When really those 1,000 voices are a bunch of paid Kremlin employees. Make no mistake. It is hard, Paula, sometimes to discern between bots and actual people. If you don't take the time to go and look, if you don't take the time to analyze what they're looking at, and to the best of my knowledge, we in the United States have done nothing to counter this attack on our society. This attack is real. It's as real as an open front with artillery. When I think of how the political discourse in our nation has been rolled back 50 fucking years to bring back bullshit that we had settled a long time ago, that all people are created equal, that bodily autonomy is a real thing and is ensconced as a constitutional right. To see that disappear in this loaded Supreme Court, a Supreme Court 1/3 appointed by Donald Trump. How many presidents go their entire career, even two terms, and don't get to appoint a Supreme Court justice? But with the machinations of Mitch McConnell and the Senate Republicans, he got that privilege. Unreal. Unreal. And we've done nothing to counter it. We've done nothing to counter this anti-vax bullshit. And so you have a case of polio in Long Island. That's a real thing, thanks to the anti-vaxxers. It's ridiculous. It's insane. We see the rights of women, half of our population, being curtailed, being told, you don't know what's best for you. You should leave it to us because we know better. It's unreal. It's unreal. When I meet Ukrainians here, when they find out that I'm an American, almost always the first thing they do is they thank me. Sincerely and deeply. It's embarrassing. I really wish it would stop. But they do, because they appreciate everything that the United States has done for them. And you know what I tell them? I tell them that we appreciate what they are doing for us. They are reminding us of what liberty costs. They are reminding us of how a free people behaves. They are reminding us of what is most important in this life: the truth, not the bullshit lies that the Kremlin wants you to believe, not the lie that the Maidan was a puppet bullshit of the CIA. It wasn't. The lie that the Kremlin wants you to believe is that people have no power, that you can't do anything, that what you do doesn't matter. That's the lie that all autocracies want you to believe. They want you to believe that you are powerless in the face of their power. And when you give in to that notion, you become the eunuch, apoliticized, powerless people of the Russian Federation who think there's nothing they can do to stop this war, that what they do doesn't matter. It is the greatest lie ever told. And to believe it is to abandon all hope. We have power. We can make a difference. I'm with you, Anthony. Thank the Ukrainians for fighting for all of us and for reminding us of what it is to be an engaged, informed democracy of free people making a difference in the world. I know that's what they've done for me. No two ways about it. Thanks for liking the live, everybody. Thanks for all the gifts, too. So today is the anniversary of the Maidan. It is Thanksgiving week in the United States. And I want to express to everybody how grateful I am to all of you for all the support and for shit like that. When do I ever get to see myself in a Knight's helmet, Eli? Huh? I also, yeehaw, thank you, Russell. I also want to give a big shout out and remember the good news we got this week and be grateful for it. Thank you, G2. And be grateful for it. Bogdan Yermokin is back home with his sister. That's a huge win. It's only one out of approximately, I was reading today, who was the source? I'm sorry, I forget now. God damn. It was reported on BBC News, and I forget who their source was. It wasn't UNICEF, but it was somebody like that, who, according to them, there are 11,000 Ukrainian children currently in 73 re-education camps across Russia. Now, I can't imagine anything more evil sounding than a re-education camp for children. Children are supposed to be educated. What have they learned that they need re-education from? Only their identity as Ukrainians. That's it. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we, especially those of us in the United States, approach our Thanksgiving tables this week and think about what we are grateful for, do not forget that there's at least 11,000 Ukrainian children who will not be with their families this Thursday for dinner, that they are suffering in ways I don't even want to contemplate, at the tender mercies of Marina Belova, whatever the fuck her name is. Let's remember that. Okay. That's about it for me. I'm going to climb down off the soapbox here and end the YouTube stream. Thank you, YouTube. And then we'll just open it to Q&A.